What's happening, fellow traders? So just another quick video with regards to the my positions that I took basically on Euro USD last Friday, March the 8th, right? And yeah, just a quick walkthrough, recap, or case study, if you want to call it like that, right? Of the positions that I took and why I took them, because basically, as I posted the Euro USD update videos, but also those update screenshots within the community, right? Basically, I believe this year was the last screenshot that I posted, right? So basically, I had done my markups, right, from the 15-minute time frame. And as we can see here, I had set my alert here in case price comes here to our internal, liquidity of the higher time frame, right? Because technically we have our major inducement like this here, right? However, within that most recent single leg here, right, we have definitely interesting things happening, right? As I mentioned, we have our internal liquidity here, and we have basically a decisional POI sitting below that internal liquidity, and we have basically our extreme, POI within our internal structure in conjunction with that internal liquidity again, right? If price does not show any kind of reaction, confirmation, criterias, setups, that we would like to see from this area, it may be very possible, right, for price to come into this year POI, so to say, right? And obviously we will again look for some kind of reactions followed by confirmations, before we jump into positions, obviously, right? Because at that point price definitely may or may not, depending on where stop losses are collected the most, obviously. It may even take out that major liquidity here, right? And again, if no reaction, confirmation whatsoever is given, at some point, I think this year 15-minute time frame order flow, the extreme inefficient one, right? Which also has, let's say, our engineered liquidity, I guess, right? Within this here area. So this area could be, let's say, our Hail Mary, right? If, price does not give any proper setup, either for the short term, right, or long term, because if we plan to enter here, we can definitely get out of the most recent high here, right? And at that point, I believe it was the Asian high. Yeah, indeed. Right, so if we get in here, especially from the lower time frames, yeah, like we can definitely decide to get out here, right? However, if price shows no indication of reactions, confirmations whatsoever, interesting things that we can utilize for potential buys here, then one could look perhaps, if price smashes through that area until price reaches here, one could look for potential shorts. But I cannot say it enough. The thing about counter trading obviously is if we have a picture perfect textbook entry here, right, and then we get in here with a single candle mitigation, for example, and we target this here area, right, as in a counter trade position, yeah, it may happen, but at some point price just may do that, right, and then miss your target, and then stop you out at either break even or perhaps your stop loss. Yes, because at some point then this will become, let's say, our new major inducement, right? So it will move from this here area to this here area, right? And then this becomes our higher time frame, major structure, engineered liquidity. Yes. So yeah, be cautious with any kind of counter trade positions. They may play out in our favor, obviously, right? But If they don't be surprised, right? Because after seeing, let's say, a very minor chalk here, one cannot, indicate that, okay, we have our chalk here, right? And then we have now liquidity here taken out. Boom, let's take the price all the way down to here. I mean, 1 in a million, that may happen, right? But obviously, in this case, we are overall bullish. Yeah, so I rather prefer, either for short terms from here until here, or, if price comes here, taking out liquidity, or even here, right? I mean, especially if price comes here, I can look for very aggressive entries to take the price up all the way up here, right? If I would like to do that, obviously. I mean, it will take some days, right, to get there, I think, usually. But, at that point, it will support the overall bias sentiment and, setup ideas and all that, right? But again, with the emphasis on, a valid, proper setup here after a 15-minute time frame reaction, lower time frame confirmation, right? However, let's not deviate from our video here. I mean, at some point, right, price came and triggered my alert, basically, right? And that happened basically after London here opened, right? So at some point I noticed, interesting. So what did I do? I scaled or zoomed in to that area, right? We are still on the 15-minute time frame. Yes, so as we can see, price definitely came, took out that internal liquidity here. It was this black candle that did the liquidation, right? So just like what happened here, right? This candle was about to close above the candle here that topped out. Now, that did obviously not happen here, right? Because the black candle did the liquidation. If this here gray candle did something similar here, one could, mark this candle out, right, as our 15 POI, 15 minute that is, right? And if price gets back there, we can look for lower time frame confirmations to either enter here refined, or, one could look for a perhaps single candle mitigation entry, or scalp, right? As some may also call it, right? But technically it's basically the same thing, right? So if that was the case, right, candle close above this one, yeah, I mean, if you are trading from the 15-minute time frame, you can definitely consider a single candle mitigation entry here, like that, right? But obviously that did not happen immediately, right? Because the next candle, what did it do? It took out the candle that in return took out our structure-wise higher time frame internal liquidity, right? Decisional, nevertheless, yes, right? But, looking at the reaction, basically what did this candle did to this candle was basically the same what this candle did to this candle. The only difference is here it happened on a structure-wise, candle-wise level, while it happened here on a structure-wise level, yes? So at this point, if we now mark out this here candle and the next candle comes back into that area, we can definitely look, at least from the lower time frame, if you would like to go for refined entries, for potential setups, and let's continue and let's see. Yeah, so at this point, the next candle indeed showed some potential of coming down. Now what I did is I indeed marked out this here 15-minute time frame candle as our potential area of interest, as we can see here from the green rectangle, I suppose, right? And at some point, what did I do? Yeah, I basically went to the lower time frame, right? 1 minute to be more specifically. And there I basically noticed, okay, now look what we have here. Definitely interesting stuff, right? So here we have that higher time frame internal liquidity taken out, right? And then price basically left our most recent, internal high here. It took it out, it closed above it. So I have also my internal chalk confirmed at this point. Plus I have my liquidity created here, right? So it definitely looked interesting. And if now price comes back into that 15-minute time frame candle, supported by our lower time frame or 1 minute time frame liquidity here, right? Perhaps one can even add this here candle below our liquidity here, right? As a confluence is since it's very close to each other. So if price takes out that liquidity like that, and basically it retests that POI at the same time, and it does something like this, I mean, yeah, at some point we can look for a single candle mitigation or scalp, again, as some may call it, right? But one can consider a single candle mitigation entry at that point, right? So yeah, definitely interesting price action. And basically what I did at that point is just keeping a close eye on how the candles react, respond to those areas of interest, right? So if we then continue down, now at this point it got interesting, right? Because I noticed, okay, look at this. Price definitely took out internal liquidity here, and now it is basically reacting to this here candle like that, right? Now, why did I not enter here with a limit order and very aggressively like this here, right? For example, because we had liquidity and we had that inefficient candle or POI, which in return took out the candles to the left, right? And on a higher time frame, even this candle took out that structure-wise internal liquidity of the higher time frame, right? So basically what we are seeing here is basically the fractal nature of what happened on the higher time frame in general, right? So at this point, again, the reason why I did not enter via a aggressive limit order here, right, before price came into that area, or even from this here liquidity, perhaps, I can only imagine, right, how many traders basically placed either a limit order from that liquidity, since it's very close to that POI, or perhaps even from the POI, and just put their stop losses here, right? I mean, I personally would have waited for a little bit more confirmation, a candle-wise confirmation, like single candle mitigation, after a obvious reaction here, after, a structure-wise confirmation, basically, right? Because now, again, internal chalk, higher time frame, internal liquidity taken out, right? Here on the lower time frame, the candle here took out all the previous candles to the left, right? Liquidity created, taken out, and now POI, right? If this was happening at an extreme area, like let's say this was major inducement and everything to the left was already either mitigated, retested, liquidated, or in short efficient, then I would have not hesitated to consider entering via a limit order here, right? But in this case, yes, I had my internal choke confirmed, liquidity created, and POI. But remember, guys, we have that 15-minute time frame internal decisional POI, right? Sitting below that higher time frame internal liquidity. Yes, so price technically has every reason to go lower. So at this point, I thought, well, I can only imagine that price does one of two things, right? Either a lot of traders who had entered here, perhaps via a limit order, right? First will get stopped out, right? Price will collect those, money, stop hunt, liquidity, right? And then, if I see some single candle mitigation after that, I will be considered, right, in a aggressive entry, so to say, right? Because then it shows, okay, price now has taken out stop losses. Technically, yeah, like it should have no reason to go lower after a confirmed single candle mitigation, right? It has technically every reason to go lower if this should happen, let's say, right? So instead of closing above that candle here, let's say, right, continuing down to that, again, higher time frame decisional POI, that purple one, right, the rectangle. So I was definitely, again, keeping a close eye on price action, right? And then this happened here, right? So I thought, okay, now indeed, either price does continue down and targets that POI, gives a reaction. I can then look for a potential, entry for a buy. Or now that all the stop losses are collected from those, I only can imagine who had entered here with a limit order, right? If now price, gives a engulfing candle above this candle here, right? I can definitely consider now a aggressive entry instead of here via a limit order, right? Because at that point, again, technically it has every reason to go lower, but now, somewhat of that doubt that price technically will go lower is a little bit taken away, right? If that makes sense, right? So we are scaling down the probability of, low probability entries and, scaling up our high probability entries in a aggressive way. Yes. So at this point, I basically waited, right? And after seeing this, yeah, I definitely got interested, right? Because now what happened? Now the stop losses are taken out here. It was this black candle that basically topped out, and this current gray candle here, what did it do? It did a sweep of that previous black candle here, right? So let's see. And then, yeah, at this point, I thought, okay, it may not take out that candle which topped out here. It may not take out that high. Perhaps it indeed will continue down, right? And if that's the case, this could be a temporarily internal bearish liquidity for us to, perhaps short into that purple PY. But again, be cautious, right? Because it may manipulate us and then eventually, without reaching that PY, the purple one that is from the higher time frame, right, decisional, it may just continue higher, stop us out, perhaps even at break even nevertheless. But that's the thing about counter trading again, right? So at this point, I thought, well, let's just see what will happen then. Either it goes lower or higher, right? It can do just one of two things. Now at this point, yeah, I definitely got interested because now price was definitely above this year candle high, and it had basically 46 seconds to go. So what did I do? Immediately, I placed my first entry here via a limit order now. Right? Because what I am looking for here did not happen within this here POI. Now, if it had happened here within that POI, right, this will be my aggressive entry. Our conservative entry would have been wait for a internal shock first and then for price to come back, either take out liquidity, or if there is no liquidity created, right, perhaps it may just give us a internal shock, come down, create efficiency here. It all depends on how price reacts to this area and how the candles that topped out either closed or swept each other, right? So at that point, yeah, I definitely got interested in entering now with a aggressive entry via single candle mitigation instead of going with an aggressive entry here without any confirmation, right? Because at this point, I definitely had my structure-wise confirmation, but I did not have my candle-wise confirmation here. Right, like that. And because I knew, okay, we have still POIs, liquidity areas down, where price technically has every reason to go to. So that's why I rather wait for this to happen, before price reaches that POI. Otherwise, I will just, wait until it does reach the POI. In this case, I waited patiently. And at this point, yeah, price definitely showed me a entry criteria. So what did I do? With 2 seconds to go, I basically placed my first buy order via limit, right? And then price came, it triggered my position, right? And then it went higher. And, at some point, I noticed, okay, price came back again, right? So probably to create efficiency at somewhere of the candle, the most recent candle, right? And I thought, well, since it's now hovering again between my entry and stop loss, let's just go with a identical 2 for 2 via a stop order, right? Because again, interestingly, like my previous video, my entry sits again at the halfway, 50%, right, of this year candle, which was at this point being, created efficient. So yeah, before price indeed went to the upside, what did I do? I placed my order, and in this case, price did continue higher, triggering my second identical position via a stop order, right? And at this point, I again placed a limit order, a third identical position, just in case if price now comes back to take out this year candle low, for example, and perhaps even create efficiency still at this candle, because now this year created a very minor fair value gap between the candles here, right? So if price does come back, either create efficiency at that fair value gap or create efficiency at this candle, it will trigger my third identical position via a limit order, right? And now I was definitely confident to do so, right? Because now I had both my structure-wise confirmation and my candle-wise confirmation in conjunction with the stop hunt of those aggressive buyers who had entered here, right? So it definitely added up, right? And yeah, at this point, yeah, as we can see here, right? Let me go back one. right? So yeah, it was this gray candle, right? We don't see any wicks into that area, so I placed my third identical position via limit order. And here, yeah, we can see it before this candle continued higher. It did trigger my limit order here with this here candle wick, right? So yeah, at some point price went higher. Yeah, and here I basically also, marked my internal chalk, internal liquidity here, and obviously that POI, where I can only imagine a lot of traders did enter very aggressively via limit order, but I did not, right? I was waiting for again, candle-wise confirmation from the lower time frame after a structure-wise confirmation on the lower time frame and a candle-wise confirmation on the higher time frame, if that makes all sense, right? But in this, case, price came a little bit higher, and then I noticed, okay, it is now starting to, give a reaction at some point, right? And when I noticed this, I thought, okay, perhaps price may come now, create efficiency at this here candle, right? And if it does so, and if it pushes, again, somewhat of the 50% of that candle, coincidentally, again, my entry, right? It will trigger my fourth identical position via a limit order again, right? So at some point, I thought, price thought, I can be not bothered, right? It moves basically away. But after some point, right, I noticed, perhaps there's still hope, right? So I confirmed my limit order here, and as we can see here, right, price indeed came, triggered my limit order. While doing so, it definitely reacted to this here candle, and also, to the wick of that candle even. So definitely interesting stuff. And let's see, yeah, it went even a little bit more down, right, for some reason. And when I noticed this, I placed basically my fifth identical position of my first entry, right? So yeah, as we can see here, right, price almost, to the pipette almost, right? It stopped me out, but it did not, right? Luckily. So I here confirmed my fifth identical position, right, via a stop order. And then, yeah, price just continued higher, triggering my fifth identical position of my first entry. It came back, and guess what I did here, obviously, right? Yeah, so before price again continuing higher, I placed at this point, another stop order. And at this point here, we can see, yeah, just before the candle closes, it definitely triggered that sixth identical position via stop order. And then price indeed gave a little bit of a reaction to the upside again, a little bit higher, as we can see. And at this point, I thought, again, interesting things happening, right? You may not see it at first, perhaps, but I have definitely marked it out somewhere later. But at this point, I was trying to lay the emphasis or focus on this year liquidity, right? Because at some point this year, I noticed is basically a smart money trap, right? For sellers, right? Who thought, okay, this was a BUS to the downside, right? And this is basically, where they have presumably entered here and here. Right, so I can only imagine that price at some point will give a reaction to the downside, right? And either stop losses collected here conservatively or aggressively if their stop losses are collected here at some point, right? Of those sellers, right? From this year's smart money trap. So it was only natural to me that price will react from that area, perhaps come and take out liquidity, perhaps either react to this here, candle, because it had indeed some fair value gap above it, right? Or if that candle could act as a decisional area, looking at this here gray candle, I mean, it is already retested. So then this here wick, right, may be our extreme POI if this is our decisional POI, right? Because again, even though the wick, the candle body is very minor retested here, right? This wick still that body below that wick here and here still acts as fair value gap, right? And considering that this here candle also took out this year candle, right? So it can only be natural to me if price comes back all the way down into this area, right? So we have to have a very good stamina if that happens, right? And not panic or don't deviate from our plan, and just stay disciplined, right? And patient, obviously. So yeah, continuing like that. At some point, yeah, I noticed, okay, now our internal liquidity moved from here to here, and obviously this now becomes our internal engineered liquidity, at least from the lower time frame at this point in time, right? 1 minute time frame, live price action like this. So yeah, so it was here that I basically marked out that smart money trap, as we can see, right? And at this point, imagine how many traders indeed saw this also as a resistant level instead of only a order block or smart money trap, perhaps, right? So again, I can imagine that price definitely will give some reaction at least, right, to continue higher after presumably taking out bullish liquidity, right? Because now we have that here on a higher time frame, and now things here are basically happening in the same fractal nature on the lower time frame. So let's have a look. Yeah, so price definitely came down because it reacted to that smart money trap, obviously, after triggering that much pending orders, limit orders, or perhaps even market orders, right? Those who have entered, presumably out of FOMO. So yeah, price came, took out internal liquidity, as we can see here, and it definitely now was reacting a little bit. And I was interesting not to see, not to look for an entry per se, right? Because I was only interested in entries if price comes back all the way between my entry and stop loss here, right? I don't chase price if it's away from my pinnacle point. I rather let it come to me, right? Because either this year POI may still be, retested, or, as I mentioned, this wick, right? So, and since this is a probability game, yeah, price may do something like this, and it may leave me behind for another potential entry, but I don't care, right? Because I already have like 6 running positions at this time, with each position targeting 9R, right? Per position times 6 positions. So you do the math, and at some point price did push a little bit lower, right? And when it started to come into that decisional POI, I marked that already here, right? And then price, let's see. Yeah, it missed that POI in first instance, but then it basically came into that POI here, right? So what at this point, right, I noticed, okay, the price indeed may take out that POI, candle low like that, because this gray candle was now forming as a, gravestone doji, dragonfly doji, right? So yeah, the chances may be that price does something like this, and when it does that, it will trigger my limit order, right? My 7th identical position then. Yeah, so let's continue. And that exactly happened here, right? But only, look, price was showing indication that indeed it wanted still to continue lower, right? So that's when I basically kept an eye on this year wick now, right? So at this point, yeah, so it just went a little bit higher first, right? And then I thought, okay, perhaps it may not look back, right? To this year wick. So at this point, what did I did, right? As you can guess, right? I basically placed another 8th identical position via a stop order again, right? So what happened after that? Yeah, so price continued higher, triggered my 8th identical buy position via stop order. At this point, it basically came back, right? And then what happened? Now, look at this, guys, right? I basically triggered, I basically placed my position at that point, right? But as you can see here, right, when it came back, between my entry and stop loss again, I basically went with another, buy stop order at this point, right? But when I took the screenshot, as we can see, price was already, it went above and now again came back into that area, right? So that's why the color is here. changed from, let's say cyan, green, to, let's say, what is it, like reddish, So noticing now that price again came back, right? I was again looking for potential buy positions via stop order, but now I was, already in, a few positions. So I wanted a little bit more confirmation that basically price indeed comes into this area, reacts to it, holds it, respects it, and then shows potential to continue higher, right? Because then, if I do get stopped out, it will be only out of these positions here so far, right? Otherwise, if price does confirm everything that I am looking for, A reaction here, B, followed by a candle confirmation, C, and all that, right? So if this, then that, otherwise so and so, basically reacting instead of, predicting or whatever, right? So yeah, at this point, price did continue lower. It came into that wick, as we can see, right? And yeah, at this point, I basically even marked it here, right? With that again, box tool, I believe it's called, right? And as we can see, price was definitely reacting very nice to that candle, right? So with 6 seconds to go, yeah, I basically noticed after that this here, and when I did, right, I again didn't hesitate and just went with another buy position, right, via a stop order. So when time came, boom, my 10th identical position of my first entry here was triggered, as we can see, right? I had, crossed a dashed line here, and obviously price was now above that area. But, seeing this, I also got interested in another scale in here, right? With, again, the same concept, right? Basically, single candle mitigation of this here black candle, which basically topped out, right? In this here extreme inefficient area of the lower time frame after taking out the extreme internal liquidity, right? So if price now comes back like this, right, I was considering another position, and because I already had 10 identical positions at this point, right, I was now focusing on scaling perhaps in from this year, right? Because I have now like 10 times 9R position running here. And this was my first 10R position. So, if price now came here, triggered my position, does something like this every time, and, I can definitely look for starting to scale in identical positions here, right? So I will just leave these 10 running, and then, focus on this year new entry, right? My second entry, technically. So yeah, at this point, I noticed definitely, okay, now we have also some minor liquidity here created, right? It definitely adds confluence to this year POI. After that one created efficiency here, and this one technically took out that liquidity here, and this one was supported by this liquidity, right? So it definitely made sense to go at this point with definitely a limit order, because now, as mentioned earlier in the video, everything to the left, right, is now either liquidated, mitigated, or efficient, but from a higher time frame internal structure, right, and liquidity area. So technically, yes, price still has every reason to go lower, right? But looking at how price action reacts, to the sessions, to the structure, and how it is basically creating art in front of our eyes, I mean, if all the stars align and the universe gives you signals like this, I mean, you cannot ignore it, right? So yeah, at that point, I noticed this, so that liquidity was taken out, but price did not continue lower to trigger my position, unfortunately, right? And now this happened, right? Price continued higher. So what I did was I moved this year liquidity now, and my next screenshot, yeah, I basically moved it to here, because now we had a actual pull back, right, like that. So again, if price comes back into that area, I definitely will get interested in seeing how it reacts to that area and presumably scale in additional positions here, right? Identical. So after that, I basically noticed this. Okay, I thought, it may perhaps trap now buyers at this here order block, right? Whereas some may see this as a BOS to the upside, right? And they saw these two candles having, a little bit more volume slash momentum in comparison with those minor gray candles or bullish candles here, right? So yeah, I can only imagine that perhaps some traders saw this as a order block, to enter from. But at this point again, if I miss out any position here, it is what it is, right? I rather again let price come to me, because now price has impulsive, corrective, impulsive, and now is technically ranging between my most recent high and internal low here, right? So even if price continues higher like this, at some point, this here becomes my new liquidity, right? Like that. So before price continuing higher here, it may come back all the way down just to take out that newly internal liquidity, at which point this will be our engineered liquidity, right? And then perhaps it may either, continue higher like that, or, it may just come here, and after that, perhaps it may give us any kind of additional, setups, positions, criteria, signals to look for, right? So yeah, I just kept my eyes on the chart, and here, yeah, exactly what I, showed you guys just a few moments ago, right? Yeah, so basically what I did now, I marked my liquidity now here, and this is now my engineered liquidity, right? So if price comes here, the first thing that I will be interested into looking for is a potential entry here. If all the stars align, textbook entry is given, I could consider perhaps taking a position here. Otherwise, if not, right, I would rather go with the extreme area. Why? Because again, here price has technically every reason to go lower. When it does that, here it has technically no reason to go lower, right? Because now it is here efficient. Again, this was efficient, that one was liquidated, this was efficient, even liquidated, right? So it will only make sense for me to be patient and sit on my hands, right? And let price come to me, unless, I see something interesting happening. Now at this point, yeah, as we can see, right, price came, it took out that liquidity here, and now it even reacted from this here candle wick, right? So it was definitely interesting. This was our internal choke. So perhaps if you are a little bit aggressive, yeah, you can look for perhaps an entry somewhat like that, right? But looking at how the price behavioral pattern reacted in this area after this year happened, I rather, especially on the lower time frame, and especially with the emphasis on the 1 minute time frame, I rather trade from those extreme areas, right? Instead of those, micro areas, in this case, micro from the higher time frame, but, internal areas like this can definitely be utilized when they are at a pinnacle point. But like I said, preferably with a little bit more confirmation that price holds here. And after taking out those stop losses from this year, smart money trap, because now everyone saw this as a BOS, and pending orders triggered after stopping out, right? If price gives any kind of structure-wise and followed by a candle-wise criteria here, then I could decide to move my, entry from here to perhaps here, or just let this one pending just in case that this one, does not work out, right? It basically comes down to making decisions, I guess. But yeah, that's basically what I would look for. And otherwise, just wait, let my, limit order, which is still pending here, right? Do the work if price should decide to come back into that area. Now, price was definitely reacting, yes, and we at this point had, I also believe, a single candle mitigation entry here, right? So one could have, look for a aggressive way to enter at this point, but since we have, and that's basically my whole point, right? So what happened here? if one had entered here via single candle mitigation, right, it would have worked out until a certain, point, and then price basically comes down, takes out everyone who had entered here, right, and now, after taking out engineered liquidity, creating efficiency at the extreme below our extreme inefficient liquidity, and yeah, right, my position now was triggered, at least my second entry, right, the first position of my second entry, that is. And when I saw this, I basically, as you can guess, right, placed a identical 2 for 2 of my second entry, right, via a limit order, stop order, because now again price was hovering between my entry and stop loss. Yes, so here I got triggered, and at some point, yeah, you can guess it, right, before price again went higher, right, what I did is basically I placed another limit order here, just in case if price does come back, take out this liquidity here, the candle, right, because the gray candle did not sweep the black candle here, right, just as how, where was it, when it happened, oh yeah, here, right, look, this very minor wick, it did take out the previous candle that topped out, right? And here it did not happen. So I thought, okay, price may still come back, take out that low, right, with a wick, and then continue higher. And if that happens, I will place my limit order and again a stop order, right? If I get, any confirmation that indeed it holds, right, like that, and not pushes, boom, just, through my stop loss, so to say. So that's why at this point I placed another identical position of my second entry here, right? And then, yeah, let's basically, you can see it perhaps when I zoom in, go on a bit like that. Yeah, so here we can definitely see it, right? So it was basically this little wick that, after the price closed here, it came back. It did not take out that candle low here, but it definitely created, before continuing higher, somewhat of a efficiency on that gray candle, right? And in doing so, yeah, it triggered my position, but obviously it was so fast, I did not catch my stop order. But my limit order, yeah, definitely got triggered at that point. So let's go back, and it was here. Yeah, so let me go back, guys. And at this point, right, again, because now I missed my stop order, right, as I explained a few seconds ago, what I did, I basically placed a limit order again, just in case if indeed price now comes and creates efficiency at the, well, second to last candle. If this here is the current candle, yeah, the last candle before the current candle, right? If price comes back, right, because it just opened and it was just flat out, right? So if it does that and creates efficiency at this candle, in doing so, perhaps again triggering my position before continuing higher, yeah, I will definitely consider a limit order, which I did at that point, right? So that's why somewhat later I noticed after New York opened, because at this point here, I just placed my limit order and I had other activities for the coming, half hour. So when I came back after half an hour, I noticed, okay, now that New York has opened, I noticed my fourth identical position of my second entry here was now also triggered, right, via that limit order, as I mentioned. Looking back at it, could it even scaled in perhaps one and 2 times, because at that point I could have said this could act as a liquidity, this candle as a PUI, and somewhat my entry again at halfway of that PUI. So yeah, I noticed, okay, I basically missed out 2 additional positions of this year's second entry. So but still, right, 10 positions running here, and now 4 positions running here, 14 in total. Definitely not bad, right? But I was glad that, at some point when New York opened, that the price was indeed pushing higher. And yeah, so what I also did was quickly, have a peek on the 50-minute time frame, because on the 50-minute time frame, even if the 1 minute here is a little bit cloudy, noisy, or whatever term you may call, right? Yeah, like the 50-minute time frame also, right? What happened here? Yes, so here we had another PY candle close, right? Came back and did its thing. And at this point, right, we can see, okay, now this year candle took out the previous candle, right? And this year candle took out the previous candles here. Yeah, so if price again does something like that, I will be interested in scaling in more buys at this point, right, from the lower time frame. So that's basically what I was looking for on the 50-minute time frame from this point. And let's see. Yeah, I basically went back to the lower time frame, 1 minute to be more specific, right? And yeah, basically I at this point had drawn my most recent internal liquidity here, right after this one here got liquidated and price created efficiency at this extreme inefficient area. Now basically I noticed, okay, this here candle is now altogether efficient with this move, right? And then if now price has taken out that high, it basically created already efficiency at this candle here. So yeah, if price comes back to take out that liquidity, it should definitely be interesting to enter with a aggressive single candle mitigation entry like this, for example, right? Price comes, first traps buyers, gives a reaction, and then stops them out while doing so, taking out bullish internal liquidity here, right? Gives a reaction, at which point we don't have to wait for any internal choke to be confirmed. We can just go with a single candle mitigation aggressive limit order here, because at that point, you know, price will create efficiency again at this area. And prior to that, right, this here is efficient, this here is efficient, right? This here is also efficient, and again liquidated, 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 liquidated. You get the picture, right? So then what happened? Price continued higher. It did not, you know, come back to take out that liquidity. And after this, you know, I basically marked out my BOS here and BOS here, right? And now my liquidity basically moved from here to here from a, you know, structure-wise perspective, right? Because we now had that BOS here, and after price kind of topped out earlier here, right? Yeah, so basically I was looking at price action like that, right? And then this happened, right? But you know, after I posted this, you know, screenshot within the community, like 1400 hours and 26 minutes, luckily one of the members notified me immediately. Watch out, there is like red news within 4 minutes, right? And I even didn't notice that there was news, because I never look at fundamentals, to be honest, or news whatsoever, right? And most of the time news does play out in my favor, right? Most of the time, not always, most of the time. But when I heard that, I basically made a very quick and strategic decision, right? I thought, well, you know what, price can do one of two things, right? Either news comes out, it, you know, flies to the moon, smashes my TP, which was today's Asian high, right? Or, you know, I move all my stop losses to break even, and price pushes down, stops me at break even, collects all those stop losses before continuing higher, right? So I had to make a decision. I could have gotten out with profits guaranteed here, right? Where price basically is now. But again, I basically made a strategical decision, because again, either price stops me out at break even, right? I will have no wins, but also no losses, right? Or price pushes higher and, you know, gives me 10 times 9R and 4 times 10R, right? So it was for me definitely, you know, a strategical decision, and just, you know, move my stop losses to break even at that point, right? And as you can see in the next screenshot, boom, that just happens, right? I mean, in your face. Price just, stopped everyone out who, just like me, presumably, had entered here from this otherwise textbook, price action. I mean, it's just like art when you look at it, right? But that was exactly the intention of this here one single candle, I guess, right? Because it just stopped everyone out, right? And after that, what did it do? Yes, sir. There you go. It flew to my target, right? So if, when the news came out and it opened here, if it had done the opposite, right? If it just had taken out that Asian high and then continue lower, right? Definitely would have been in profits, right? But in this case, it is what it is, man. I mean, I made a strategical decision that, okay, if this happens, I can only imagine that it can happen, right? But that's why I moved all 14 positions to break even, right? And after getting stopped out, price just flew to the moon, and not only hitting our TP here, Asian high, but also then some, right? And then I basically looked at the 3-minute. Now, remember, guys, that I posted before I took all my positions here that at some point price may react to that 15-minute time frame, higher time frame, internal decisional POI here. Now, this year, well, it looks like orange, but it is actually yellow. But yeah, this here like orange colored POI is basically my 3-minute refined POI of this year, purple colored higher time frame decisional POI, right? Because this year, PAP, as I like to call it, right? These have definitely values, and in conjunction with also a retest of this year POI, which is in relation with that PAP, right? I mean, yeah, as we can see, price just kissed it, to the T. I mean, and then just, didn't look back. No, I can't be bothered, right? So definitely interesting price action there. And yeah, I hope you guys definitely, get some answers to questions you did have, as in, why did I enter there? What was I looking for? And how did I manage my positions by making strategical, decisions, right? So that's basically it, family. And I wish everyone a blessed weekend with their families and loved ones. And I will definitely catch you guys next week during our next trading days. One love.